What up, friends? Today I want us to do a light and shadow analysis. What up, friends? Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. Today I thought I'll do something a little different. What I want to do is go over a picture. It's a picture that I painted in the past. Some of you may remember it. It's of Saint Jacques right here. And what I want us to do is basically go over this and analyze the way the shadows and light works. And then I will take a piece of paper and actually try and draw this for you the way I see it, maybe in a simplified way, so that you can understand how I go through the process of seeing the values and then translating them to a sketch. Okay, not to a painting this time, but maybe another time we can do that as well. Okay, so I'm gonna change the angle and we're gonna take a closer look at this scene. So as I said, some of you may recognize this scene from the painting I did based on that a long while ago. So I wanted to choose this one because it really does show a lot of interesting things, okay? So let's talk a bit about how the light and shadows behave in this scene, and then of course, as I said, I'll try and recreate some of that for you just so that you understand it better. So first off, we have this building here. We have this side of the building sort of facing to the right. Then we have the left side of the building here facing the left. Now obviously light comes somewhere from here because this whole side is lighter, okay? In fact, it's very interesting because what we have here is this side is lighter than the sky, but this side is darker than the sky, so we just get this very interesting effect of light and shadow. Now, so light comes generally from this direction, but if you want to really recognize where it's coming from more accurately, I would recommend you try and focus on some smaller details. So let me zoom in a bit so you can better see this area. Okay, so especially if you focus on this statue here, you can see that light sort of hits it and casts a shadow of it to the left. So the light comes somewhere around this angle. You see it hits it and then it casts it onto the wall here. Now something interesting happens here. What happens is that this shape of the shadow actually tells us about the shape of this wall, okay? So because this shadow looks like this, sort of rounded, it means this one also is rounded. It's coming towards us, sort of like this, okay? It's coming towards us and back down. I hope that makes sense. It's like a little arch. Okay, so this shape of the shadow really hints at that. Also pay attention to this area. You can see how the shadow moves here. It basically starts as a straight line that's vertical, and then it moves to the right. So what this means is that here also we have this shape, and then it sort of it sort of goes deeper into, like, how would I say it? It goes like this and then inside. So this area is much more beveled than this area, okay? Because it casts a larger shadow. Larger shadow here, smaller there. Okay, now if you look at this area as well, there's a lot of interesting things happening here. You have this stripe of light here, because this whole area is sort of creased inside, but in the middle of it, there's a part that's a little more beveled, that's coming outside. It's a little more outer, and so it does get hit by light. And all of these little hints really help you understand the shape. Now if we go upwards a little here, you can see how this little gargoyle or statue, the light hits it and the bottom part is fairly dark. So the light comes from at least like I would guess and estimate that it's a little more than vertically, horizontally. It doesn't hit it horizontally exactly, but a little from the top. Okay, so all of these are just hints that help you better understand the structure. If we look in this area, you can see these sort of stripes, not stripes, but little jagged edges of shadow. These come from this area because it's a jagged area. Okay, and all of these things really help you understand the way the structure is built. Now, you don't necessarily have to understand it in order to paint it, and that's one big thing to pay attention to. As I recommend always, paint abstract shapes. Try and paint the shapes the way you see them without necessarily trying to portray their meaning, because when you just get rid of the meaning and try to focus on your visual skills, it's a much better result many times. Okay, now we have one more thing I wanted to look at that's interesting. That's this left area, this whole left area. So basically it's all in the shadows, but if you do look at this small statue, it has some part that's well lit. Probably the sun comes from the right somewhere. This whole area casts a shadow on this, but this little edge here manages to escape that shadow. Okay, so just one interesting thing that I noticed on the top. And then we have all of this left area, as I mentioned, in the shadow, but we have some deeper shadows in it. So if you squint your eyes, or if you try to unfocus your vision, you will see that this entire area is darker. All of these areas under the arches are darker, and of course the obvious one is the windows. The windows are darker. Usually windows tend to be either really dark or really light from my experience. These ones are very dark because basically the inside is dark. And the pane sort of lets light come through, but it doesn't come back. So these areas are even darker. Now you do have this spot of light here. Let me show you. This spot of light here, I'm not sure what creates it. It can be reflected light from somewhere, it can pass through here, but this is for example one thing I wouldn't even add in a painting. I would just ignore it and make this whole side darker. So anyway, I hope this quick analysis helped you better understand the shape of this. What I want to do now is quickly sketch it and in a way that will convey to you the basic structure of this and how it affects the shadows, okay? So I'm going to zoom out a bit and we're going to work on that. Okay, so this is going to be interesting because I haven't done a video that's narrated in real time in a long time. I usually record all the painting process usually, and then I just run it in time-lapse or just leave it as it is and add narration. So I may be a little slower, you will have to forgive me about that. So what I first want to do is just break this structure down into its simplest form. And to do that, we need to focus on the long lines. When you focus on the long lines, you get a better understanding of why a structure looks the way it does. So we have a lot of long lines, but the easier ones to put in are actually the top here. Okay, so I'm just going to put one, and hopefully this pen is still has some life in it. So that's like one line, and don't forgive me if it's not that accurate. I'm just trying to convey to you the general idea behind this structure. Okay, now we have another one, but it's at a gap here. You see there's this gap somewhere around like this, and then we have that other line going down like that. Okay, now the rest of the shape of the building is very interesting. So we have that left facing wall, we have the right facing wall, and we have one area that's sort of facing towards us. I want to get that area that's facing towards us. So we have this weird square here, like that. And if we continue moving down, it sort of just widens more and more. So I probably should make this a little longer, and this as well, just a little longer. And this moves sort of down like this, down like that, and I'm really trying to simplify the shape here, so you will see I'm dropping most of the details. Okay, so we have this sort of thing going on. Now I'm around here, maybe. Then we have this shape of these rounded areas. Hopefully you can hear me well. It's been a while since I recorded my voice in that way, so like this, like that. Now it doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but it will, so don't worry. So this is all the middle section here. Now on the left we have one line going down like this. Now this actually happens on the left as well, because it's just the same shape on this side and this side. It has the same characteristics. So what happens is, because of the angle, you see this edge and this edge is lower. Also here it's gonna happen the same thing. So you take a line that's almost parallel to this, you ghost above that, and what you'll find is that it's somewhere around here at this point. So you continue. Again, let me show you what I did. You imagine this movement, go down here and recreate it, and then you will get somewhat of the approximate location. Then you add one line like this, you continue moving a little down. Now the same thing happens here with this shape. So we have this sort of line, but now it's a bit less at an angle. It's not like this, it's more like that because of the perspective. It moves like this, okay? So this one, and again, I will touch more on that perspective, but you can watch my other video on perspective. So anyway, this one goes a little lower, and then we have the same thing going on. Now the exact same thing happens on this side, so I'm just gonna do it like this. Then we have this little bump here. We're moving a little downwards. We have this weird bump here, and all the way maybe around here. My bad, like this. So if I just pass this line here, just to show you the parallels, it'll help a little. So this is the basic shape of the building. Now what happens is that inside this center shape we also have additional interesting things going on. So this is the middle, but out of that middle comes out two bumps on each side. So what actually happens is that you have this weird V shape inside. You can see it here, something like this. And I'm gonna again simplify it a lot because I don't wanna confuse you, and also myself really, because it's a bit of a complex scene. So then you have this line running around the middle. This is the well-lit area here. Now these two things, this sort of these are cylindrical shapes, this one and this one as well. So they're like rounded, and then they connect here in the center. And this sort of part is it's also beveled outside. Okay. So moving onward with this one, and I know it's not the most accurate, again, you'll have to forgive me about that. We have this area here again that's beveled, and it'll soon make a little more sense, okay? So now, this entire area is also a little beveled outside, like this. And this entire area is sort of also does the same thing, okay? We have this shape here, that shape there. Now what happens is that light comes somewhere around here. So this entire left side is in the shadow, okay? All of that is in the shadow. I'm just gonna do some quick cross-hatching here. Okay, so this entire area is in the shadow. Now we will add some more details in a moment, just a few more, because I don't want to make it too complex. But anyway, yeah, this entire side is in the shadow. Now another interesting thing happens because of the shape of this area. The left part of this right side structure is also in the shadow. So what actually happens is that we have some shadows running around here because of the architectural shapes. But then we also have this area that's shaded running around across this line, okay? And this line also casts a shadow, so we have this kind of thing going on here. And then, following the shape of these shapes, we have this sort of shadow running like that, running like this, and this part is also in the shade. So you see what happens actually? Light comes from here, it hits this wall directly. Some parts of this wall are turned away from the light source, and so they're shadowed as well. And also inside these parts we have deeper shadows and weaker shadows. There's quite a lot of things going on here. Now if we want to focus on this little gargoyle guy here, so I'm gonna just draw it, and it's coming out of this wall, something like this. Now the thing is that it's casting its shadow on this wall, so you will get a shadow here at the shape of the gargoyle. See what happens? And if you can create that effect consistently and keep it accurate, you will convey realistic feeling with your sketches or with your paintings, okay? Again, the sketch is really ugly, that's fine. My goal is not to create a good sketch, it's just to show you the concepts. Now, also here we have the same thing happening, because this side here is facing the light source, but this one isn't. So this one is also in the shadow. Okay, and I hope you get it. I hope you understand like why the shape of this very complex structure influences the shadows that way. Now, of course, we have tons of other details that I omitted. If we will add some more gargoyles, also we'll have this sort of thing going on like this, like that. We have this gargoyle that's mostly in the shadow, but somewhat in the light. This one has a strong shadow under it. This one also weird shadow. Now, in addition to that, we have all these statues at the top, but the more important parts, I would say, are the windows, the larger shapes. So we have this sort of a window. Now, if you don't know how to put them in, you just follow this line, place it here, and then you go like this, and you sort of just put it in there, okay? So that's one window. Then we have another one, like this. And you can see how that works. And all of these are also pretty much darker than the rest of the building. And that way you slowly build it up. They're actually much longer. They end somewhere around here. But you get the point. They end here, and then we have a whole new window here. You can see the inside of it. So a lot of things are going on here now. This area is also pretty much shaded because you have all this weird fence thing going on, and under it there's a relatively strong shadow. Now the shape isn't conveyed very well yet because to get the really good impression you have to darken things accordingly. So this area, for example, and I'll just start working on it, should probably be much darker. Okay, so if I just go over it, maybe with one more layer, and I'll try to be patient because I'm going a little fast because I know you're watching and I don't want to bore you with just cross-hatching. And I kind of don't feel like doing this in time-lapse. I do want this whole video to be narrated in real time. So anyway, if you go ahead and darken this area, and then you add some darker shadows to the windows here, there you have it, another window there. So you can sort of start to get a feel for the shape of this building. You have the gargoyle here. There is the really deeper shadows also in these windows, something like this. And slowly you build it up, okay? And then you get the accurate shape of the building as well as the light source. So basically what I wanted this video to be about is how the light influences the shadows and how the shape of the objects influences the way the shadows cast. So let me zoom in on one portion of this for a moment and let me show you something in more detail. Okay, so I basically wanted to zoom in on this area and just show you the study I just did was very rough, but if you do want to take it slowly, I'm just going to pretend like this is the only area that exists. And then you have this sort of shapes and you can be a little more accurate with it. And you have this sort of beveled shape here. We move on up with this line. Then we close it off at the top. Move around like this and another round shape. So this has this sort of imaginary line here. This shadow starts here and it moves really in a gradual manner, but here it's sharper. So this is just another cool effect you can get with the watercolors or whatever you use to make this. Then we have all of these weird small architectural details. But my point is that if you really focus on an area, you'll be able to properly convey everything you see and still keep it somewhat graceful, okay? So you see I'm putting in that shadow. This area is also pretty much in the shadow. We have some strong shadows under this one. We have very strong shadows under this sort of shape here. And you can see how very quickly this takes a good form, okay? So if you can combine some patience, we have this pole here in the middle. So if you can combine some patience while slowly building up all of the shapes, you can get a very accurate sketch or painting or whatever it is you do. And you can see here, there's also these small details on this. And you can get a very accurate result. Also this one, there's this shadow here. So I'm just moving in accordance to it. And it really conveys the shape of this wall, because this is what casts it. Then we have this gargoyle coming out of here. And of course it's gonna cast here. And you wanna not define too much the edges of the shadow, because the actual value of the shadow is what matters, okay? I hope it doesn't shake too much, because I'm moving the table a bit. And then you get this shadow. And you see how very quickly you can build an accurate representation of what you see. This shadow actually should be much darker. All of these should be much darker. But anyway, just wanted to show you that. So if you can slowly analyze on a macro level the way the shadows behave and what the structure looks like, and then you can more calmly and slowly build up all those shapes, you're gonna get a really cool result. Okay, so just wanted to give you both the macro and the sort of micro approach to this. I don't even remember what the previous one is. I'll find it in a moment. So yeah, just to conclude, here's the original one. I did it very roughly, as you can see, but it still conveys the macro larger shapes and shadows. You have this left area, you have these areas that are darker because of this, the shape of these shapes, and then we have this area that's also in the shadow. And the more you zoom out, the more you can see it clearly. And then you can start building things a little more slowly like I did here and get the result you want, okay? So hopefully this was useful in understanding how to do this, but also just in the theory of light and shadow, because we really dove deep into analyzing why this looks the way it looks. And there's tons of levels to it. Let me actually zoom in and show you. So just wanted to show you before we wrap this up how zoomed in it can get and you can get with your analysis. So if you look at, for example, even this small part that's in the light, and it casts a shadow to the left. Now it has some small architectural details on it that also affect this shadow, so it's just fascinating to see. Now we have here this weird shape that we don't know what it looks like exactly, but from its shadow we can assess that it's sort of another gargoyle. Now we have this triangle, light comes from here, so this side is hit with light. This side also is hit with light. In the middle we have shadow, to the left we have shadow, and you can really zoom in all the way and see all the finer details. And if you want to go detailed with your sketch, you can actually do that. Okay, so it really works in macro and micro. But the thing that really makes something look good is the macro first, and then you can put in the micro. So this is why it was important for me to demonstrate the macro. Then you can go down in the levels, and especially if you're doing watercolor painting and you're trying to simplify things, there's a whole lot of things to simplify here. You don't really have to dive in all the way to the micro levels. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. Let me change the angle and wrap up this video. So friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope seeing the entire process from start to finish really helped you, and I hope that you also understood some of the more nuanced points of why the lights and shadow behave the way they do in this particular scene. I deliberately chose this one because it does have some variety in it, some interesting things going on. The shapes are unique, somewhat unique, and a lot of interesting things are going on. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have and you still haven't subscribed to my channel, don't forget to do that, and also follow me on Snapchat and Instagram, where I share a lot of other updates and works in progress. And I will see you again in another video tomorrow.